Hello and welcome to part 1 of the Backtracking episode proper for Within Temptation, and as always we'll begin with the band's debut album titled Enter. Released in 1997, this would be released through DSFA Records and it was produced by Lex Vogelaar, Alexander Van Den Berg and Within Temptation themselves. And there's also a guest spot as George Oosthuizen of Orphanage lends his vocals to the song Deep Within. Now, for those who watched my brief history coverage of the band, you might have put together that the band didn't release much before this album except for a demo of the same name. It turns out that approach would work its way into this album as it was completed within either 2.5 or 3 weeks depending on the source. Either way, that's just mental to get something done that quick. It starts with the song titled Restless, which is also the only single from the album, and the song gives the album the overall feel of being at the world's gloomiest church. The keyboard work is actually very prominent in giving this album that feel, and I have to give praise to Martine Westerholt for giving the majority of this album the feeling that it has. Sharon Dennadell's vocals have a great range as well, and Ivar de Graaf's drumming is pretty stellar too, but it's the guitars and bass that sort of don't meld as well for me personally. Sometimes the riffs have a tendency to overtake, feeling too distorted and heavy when they should play along with the other things. It does unfortunately lead you to believe that this album was really completed in a short time frame. Not to mention the fact that the band did partially produce it themselves, so whose fault is it? At the same time, it is a debut album, and despite its structuring issues, it's not badly paced, performed, or composed, and again, it was released 23 years ago, and the band did the best with what they had at the time, which, back in the late 90s, wasn't a lot for a band like this. My favourite track goes to Gatekeeper. Enter is a good debut that just needed a bit more time to work out its kinks, but even with that, the band's passion and ability to blend genres really shine through here. We then move on to the band's second album, Mother Earth. Released in 2000 through DSFA Records again, this was again produced by Anthony Van Den Berg alongside Oscar Hollerman. So after their debut album became a surprise hit, the band found themselves on a pretty big national tour, and to keep fans satisfied in between albums they released an EP titled The Dance. In 1999 they took a break focusing on their personal lives and building their own recording studio, and not long after that they'd start the work for Mother Earth. And man, I can see why this became the band's breakout album. After it initially came out in the band's native Netherlands in 2000, it was released through other labels to other countries in the years following, and it's been reissued on different formats for as far as January of 2019. I mean, you've got to admit, that is just some longevity and a half there. Anyhow, Mother Earth starts with the title track, and it already has a different theme to it. I didn't talk much about the lyrics on Enter, but they seemed rather generic, which is probably part of the reason why I didn't talk about the lyrics on Enter. But this album has like a fantasy sort of concept to it, with songs about mystery and heroism, and the tone is matched by the music really well. The guitar work actually plays with the other instruments this time, even if the pacing does feel a bit slower. But in this case I'm absolutely fine with it, because it shows that the time off that the band took really works well here. The album did catch some flack for not being heavy enough as a metal album, but this band's main focus is and always has been melody and not intensity. It's a style that works for them and still sort of does today, and they make it work for them really well on this album. I would argue that this is where they properly cultivated it. I mean, sure, the album does drag a little bit in places, thanks to it being a bit more slower paced, but the melodies, performances, and really, really good genre blending, they're what makes this album good. My favourite song goes to Our Farewell. Mother Earth is an album that defines the band's improvements and hard work, with better production value on instruments as well, so yeah, I'd give it a look. Oh, sorry, next is the band's third album, The Silent Force. Released in 2004, it would be released through Great Unlimited Noises Records in Europe, or GUN for short, and Roadrunner for the rest of the world, and the producers would be Daniel Gibson and Stefan Helleblad. So, in the time between Mother Earth and this album, there'd be some lineup changes with new guitarist Rich O'Lee, new keyboardist Martin Spierenberg, and new drummer Stefan van Heestrecht. Also in the time between, their popularity grew, and they toured in places like France, the UK and Mexico, and would headline a lot of gigs in those countries. So it's fair to say that they were quite busy in the time between before deciding to spend 2004 on making this album. It starts with intro and then rolls into See Who I Am. First off, I'm glad that they put the track title intro at the start of this album, because they didn't do that for Mother Earth, instead making it the 8th track on that album, which is all kinds of dumb as that album only has 10 songs. Ow, my head hurts. Secondly, this album is named after a book titled The Hidden Force by a Dutch author named Louis Couperus. Couperus? And the album scenes revolve around that book. I have not read that book, but hell, literature is as good a source as any for a concept album, so I'll take it. The style is a bit more stripped down here. It's not as Celtic influenced as Mother Earth was, and focuses more on the symphonic side. Also, man, has the production improved. It's a lot more crisp and clean, and it feels like there's a bit more balance to everything. The symphonic elements play beautifully off of the heavier instruments, and the new members all put in pretty good performances too, filling their respective slots really easily. All in all, The Silent Force is a really good progression from Mother Earth. My favourite song goes to It's the Fear. Sorry, The Silent Force takes a solid concept and works in fantastical lyrics and themes backed by really solid production. And lastly, for part N, we reach Within Temptation's fourth album, The Heart of Everything. Released in 2007 through the same labels as last time and produced by the same people as last time, we get a guest spot as Mina Caputo of Life of Agony appears on the track What Have You Done? So after The Silent Force came out, Within Temptation's fame increased, as did their touring opportunities. They headlined Bloodstock in the UK, they won more music awards from their native country, and some of the songs from that album would appear in video games. That mainstream appeal would continue with this album as well, as What Have You Done is maybe the band's most recognisable song. It follows the intro track of the album titled The Howling, and the album's tone manages to blend the symphonic stuff with heavy stuff a lot better than previous outings. The band themselves have said that this album was where they found that balance, and I wholeheartedly agree with that statement, which I'm slightly paraphrasing. It's a far cry from their debut, when they couldn't mix it as well. This album shows a massive improvement in that area, and the recognition and success that would follow is well earned. It's structured really strongly, filling in its 57-minute length well, making it the band's longest album. But it's also filled with a movie soundtrack sort of charm to it all the way through, with the symphonic elements bouncing beautifully off of the heavy riffs and drum work. The band clearly weren't afraid to experiment more with this album, and the lyrics about redemption, betrayal and self-doubt, and the tinge added to them give them quite a bit of impact. My favourite song goes to Our Solemn Hour, or O-U-R Solemn H-O-U-R, so don't confuse people. The Heart of Everything is polished, it fills its time really well, it steps up the performance value and it nails everything that it wants to do, and also I just think that it's really good, okay? Good. So that'll about it for part 1, I will see you next time, quite possibly tomorrow but I don't know when, for part 2, where I'll be covering their last 3 albums from The Unforgiving to Resist. And until whenever that video comes out, thank you for watching, you're awesome. Bye.